Hello and welcome to Identity Office Hours. I'm your host, Mike Schwartz, founder of Glue. Today is episode 211. And before we get started, a quick reminder, please follow us on LinkedIn or YouTube. That really helps us get the word out. The topic today is NHI is the dress rehearsal for AI agents. And our guest today is Robert Yu. Welcome, Robert.
Hey, Mike. It's great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
So before we get started, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, my name's Robert Yu, and this is my 30 years working anniversaries. And go Aggie! So let me give you a brief introduction about who I am. So after college, first 5 years, I work in different engineering roles, primarily as developers. And starting 2000, I've been doing the architect work for both public and also commercial sectors. And in the last year, I started a startup, the name called IDCS. So our end goal is developing these secure identity platforms. And our very first product called Identity Visibility and Identity Intelligence, we just hit the GA on last Friday, which July 17. And that's about who I am.
Congratulations, an important milestone.
Yep.
And I have to, I'm going to date the episode for a second and just say IDCS has a particularly well-timed name for a startup, given the release of the Odyssey to theaters and to more excitement than I would have thought possible for a piece based on a ballad, a 2,000-year-old ballad. So can maybe tell us a little bit about why IDCS, why the name IDCS.
For a couple of good reasons. The first one is I read Homer's when I was a kid, so I was impressed of the main character, Odysseus, spent a decade to travel after the end of children war to his homeland. So the main character, he doesn't use his brute force, but he uses his brain and the perseverance. And the second, when I started startup, I didn't realize the journey is this hard. So I think by coincidence, his 10 years and his personal characteristic will help the IDCS to go from the startup to where we intend to be. So yeah, that was a pure coincidence.
Yeah. Well, thank you for reminding me of that because after 17 years at Glue, um, I feel I actually maybe have more sympathy for Odysseus now than I did before. Um, so the topic today is NHI is a dress rehearsal for AI agents. Um, and let me just start there. Um, why is that the case? Why is non-human identity was a dress rehearsal?
Um, there's a few key points. But before the key point, let me give you a brief introduction what AI agent does. So in the very broad sense, AI agent, there's a three type of AI agent. One is what we call the utility gen agents. So what the utility gen agent is, you can have a simple prompt and just taking the prompt from a human and ask LLM and coming back return to carry out the task. So simple example is you can have a call center application to reset the password or change the security question answer. That is typical the utility gen agent. The second kind of agent is called the fully autonomous agents. So fully autonomous agent is you have AI agent running on its own, you contacting the LLM for the reasoning and invoking the MCP to carry out the execution. The last one, it is what we call the shadow AI agent. So shadow AI agent, it means, and the most developer they have probably on their desktop. So you can have IDE. IDE has such as you can have a cloud desktop and running the AI agent using your own tokens. So that pretty much bypass all the enterprise security control. That's what we call the shadow AI agent. So now we're going back to why NHI is important. And we can, let me just stop me if I'm talking too much. So
That's fine. Actually, I'll tell you a little trick. I forgot to tell you this before, but if I feel like you're if I want you to wrap it up, I'll go to this slow. My audience now knows this trick too. But so if I leave you on full, you keep going. But if I want you to wrap it up, then I go to the small view. But no,
okay.
that was a very useful um, sort of context for me. So let me just make sure I understand. So we have a sort of scoped task type of agent like reset a password or do something simple. Then we have a more open-ended agent. And then we have the agents running like on my cursor IDE, where it's impersonating me and you can't really tell that it's an agent and not me. So those are the three types of agents that's how your, this is your taxonomy for agents. Is that right?
Yeah, there's one more type, but it's more a little bit agentic AI features is especially the big SaaS platforms, they start having the AI enabled or AI native. Most company when they sign the subscriptions, they probably didn't realize the new SaaS platform they starting their AI journeys. So
Hmm.
there might be there likely AI agent running on the platform does a job behind the scenes. So that's a fourth type, but kind of leave the gray area.
Sure. Interesting. Um, and um, so I guess, I sort of have this question. Are AI agents really different from other pieces of software in the past with regard to governance? Like, what's really different? Aren't we just talking about authorizing software, just like we've always been talking about authorizing software?
Let me think it over. Yeah, it's actually a really good question. So the key difference is the software in the past, I would say 30 years, it designed and developed for a specific goal. And the execution path, the goal is one thing, but the execution path is fixed. So that's why we call the software developing in the past before AI agent is deterministic. The
Mhm.
key thing different between AI agent versus today was the past software is AI agent by nature is undeterministic, but the true cause of undeterministic AI agent is actually coming from LLM. So think about AI agent is execution, but LLM deciding which potential paths to carry out. But because the nature of the LLM, short for large language models, and also the nature of the reasoning, introducing what we call unpredictable and also undeterministic behavior. That make an AI agent by nature is undeterministic, which means it can execute more paths than the intent.
Um, Okay. I think that's so we end up doing a lot of episodes these days on AI agents because this is really like the the major challenge I feel like our industry is taking. In fact, next week I'll do a little bit of a preview. We have another one on AI agents need intent, not roles, in introducing AI. So this is just an example of how often we talk about this on this live stream. So I sort of buy your definition that the way that an agent is making the decision is novel. We used to have to predict all the possible paths and then predict responses, almost in like a graph. Based upon this path, we're going to take this action, and the graph was known. And today we're saying, well, we're going to react to this by asking an LLM what to do, and then we're going to do stuff based on what the LLM says. So that's new, but ultimately we're still at the end result of this is that we have a piece of software that's trying to do an action on a resource. So regardless of how it got there, what action it should take on what resource, the problem that we're facing still seems similar to me, that we have an action on a resource performed by an entity, and we need to figure out whether or not we need to allow that or not. So that's just my personal take on it. I don't know that I see a real difference just because the way that the agent derived the the course of action is different, but the authorization seems the same.
I think my answer to you is yes or no. I kind of feel when I talk with other people in the space, they feel the same way. But here's my my feedback. So think about the AI agent. It's called a long execution pipeline. So in the upstream of the pipeline, which is AI agent talking to AI gateway broker from the LLM. So that beginning part, the three piece of chain, what we call the reasoning chain, that is undeterministic. However, AI agent, the second part of the chain is what we call the execution path. So that flow is from AI agent talking to the agent gateway, agent gateway talking to MCP, and MCP has the tools and tools interacting with enterprise asset. So the execution or the last chain from the tool to the asset, that is deterministic. And the most company not going to toss away, their 30-year investment. So you likely just, build a wrapper, expose their backend functionality, but that part is still deterministic and still act upon NHI or non-human identity or service account principles. So you have execution paths. The upstream is undeterministic, but the downstream, the execution piece, that is deterministic. So does
Mhm.
that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. Um, um, one of the sort of reasons I've been sort of skeptical about the whole NHI movement um, is that I feel like it's an attempt to inventory software entities, just like parallel or analogous to how we inventory people. So, in the enterprise space, I think we had an identity centric security approach where we said we know all the humans because we hired them or we've onboarded them through third party contractor relationships. And then we go through and we assign privileges to those humans. And then based on those privileges, we allow them to perform certain actions on certain resources. And I guess I have a fundamental skepticism that creating an inventory of software, the way that we create an inventory of humans, is a viable approach. But so I guess my question is do you actually think inventorying the software is what we need to do?
Yes and no. So the yes means we do need an inventory, but the no means we need to understand the intent why inventory software become more urgent. Um, about let me digress a little bit.
Mhm.
4 years ago, or in the last 20 years, identity been sitting what we call the wall defense. But starting pandemic and also the transition to the cloud, the everybody can log in from the cloud access point instead of old traditional VPN based approach. So that's why identity become the first parameter. The reason why the no piece means as part of the negotiation between AI agent and also the LLM is there's what we call a handshake. You have to expose the MCP tools. So that MCP tool has a description, for instance, pay external contractor, pay vendor. That description will be need to be fed to the LLM. So LLM, just based on the tool description, can clearly guess, with a high degree of certainty. I mean, that's what LLM does a job, almost 100%, to understand what the MCP tool is. So what in essence means, if you want leveraging the AI agent or full benefit of AI agent, you are willing or taking the step to expose your core enterprise asset or the action can act upon the enterprise asset into the LLM, into the large language model. So that is a key thing. And also LLM, based on the reasoning path, based on intent of the prompter, can decide what MCP tool it can evoke. That information passed to AI agent. So the reason why the inventory is important is we have a saying in the IAM space is, if you don't have the visibility of your identity, first, you cannot govern. Second, you cannot decide. So that's why before you decide, you got to know what you have. So authorization piece, it has to be deterministic behavior. To have a deterministic authorization behavior, you need the inventory. Period. Sorry, too strong word.
No, I understand that that is the prevailing view. I'm just a contrarian, and I don't believe that view, which is why I run my own company, I guess, and not work for other companies. Um, so my take on that is, well, let me ask the first question, which is that the it made sense to inventory humans because the onboarding and offboarding, what we call joiner, mover, leaver, for humans is pretty slow by machine terms. Like you get hired, you go to HR, you get onboarded to PeopleSoft, you know, we do access certification reviews. Your manager says, Mike is a teller, therefore he can access these systems. It's appropriate. So we have all this infrastructure for managing humans, but the velocity of the creation of software identities is much faster. Um, and to the point where we see that a lot of software is moving to ephemeral identity, where a piece of software might make an attestation. I'm a third party software process, and here's my public keys, and here's my identifier, and here's a JWT that proves that I was issued by a trusted third party. And this piece of software might then use a protocol like CMID, client metadata identity, and assert its identity, register itself at a company, and start doing stuff. And so there's a much more ephemeral process for how in the identity lifecycle for software versus humans. And then we're seeing, to make it even more complicated, we're seeing that agents might spawn other agents. Um, so there's a researcher, Sarah Cacchetti, who's been on the live stream, and she created an agent called Claudry Hepburn, which is like a lobster. And she talks about Claudry's spawn. Like the agent itself has a naming strategy for subagents. It uses some Spiffy-like protocol. Um, but then, so you have the problem of, we have an enterprise identifier like a client ID that gets to an agent, and that agents want subagents. And so the idea that each one of these agents has an identity and can be held accountable, and the idea that we're going to apply the same process for governance and management onto software identity that we did onto human identity, it just seems completely unattainable to me. And then to ask humans to review the access certification or permissions of a piece of software that existed for 5 minutes 3 months ago seems non-scalable. So I have some serious doubts about if propelling or propagating this approach to security is really going to transfer to these new, more, let's say, numerous software entities than to humans.
Yeah, let me give you two things. One is based on the protocol exchange, and the second, there's actually we can talk about the latest OpenAI Hugging Face and how they work in a similar fashion. So imagine you have AI agent, you're talking with LLM. So yes, AI agent is supposed to register with MCP servers to carry out a certain task. But however, the LLM, you send the intent, but if LLM feels like, you know what, the MCP server or MCP tools that's provided by the AI agent, it doesn't do the work, my intent does. So LLM can actually go outside the internet looking for the public MCP servers. And if they feel like, you know what, some MCP server exposed to the internet can carry out certain tasks. So for instance, can do some news aggregation, or can do some like telemetry aggregation, you will direct the AI agents that, you know what, your MCP tools cannot accomplish the task what you asked me to do. However, I find some public MCP tools, you can do the work. So the AI agent said, you know what, awesome job. So at that moment, the AI agent changing from we call fully autonomous agent to call the term called orchestration agent. So that's another more complex agent. So what orchestration agent does is say, hey, you know what, LLM said there's MCP tool, you can do a job. I will create an agent. I will register this open MCP to my agent and carry out the task and send response back to the LLM. The reason why this is important is if you we have a, I mean, our firm is small, but I did a discussion with my chief engineer regarding recent OpenAI about the Hugging Face. So two things standing out from the OpenAI Hugging Face, actually three things. So the first thing is, I don't want to talk about right or wrong. You know, the training LLM removing the security classifier, but couple things, you know, from the published information. Number one is Hugging Face have its own AI agent with open weight LLM to digesting the log file. That's how they detect a large volume of anomalous access. The second thing is the AI agent from Hugging Face detecting the AI agent is inside their parameters doing certain work. So that AI agent is now created by Hugging Face. It's actually created by the testing harness AI agent associated, you know, with OpenAI. The third thing is the AI agent able to access one VM or one pod, able to harvesting the large number of credentials. The next step is they're using harvested credentials to inject into a CI/CD pipeline. That's how they're able to affecting large number of nodes. I'm sorry, large number of pods or VM. That's how it's being detected. So where I'm going is the LLM in both cases doing the same thing. I assign you an intent. LLM job is just carry out the intent. Of course, you know, they go a little bit beyond, you know, what, you know, the actual approach is to fulfill the intent. But Mike, think about this way: our high performing employee in your company, in my startup, they're acting the same way. I assign them the task. They, based on current tool, you cannot fulfill the task, so they find out a clever way, you know, to fulfill the goal. There's a certain similarity between LLM and high performing employee. That is my personal opinion. So I'm not sure right or wrong, but I just thought about during this, you know, podcast.
Yeah, there is a certain similarity. And I had a friend who will remain nameless. And the first thing he did I used to contract, I did a bunch of contracting professional services work. And the first thing he would do when he got to a new place was hack the AD, get the administrator password, and give himself all the permissions he wanted to do whatever he wanted to do. I guess AI agents are following that same path when you say they're exactly like humans. You didn't actually answer my fundamental question though, which was is it possible to actually inventory all the identities? And how would having an inventory of identities prevent something like this? Is it actually knowing the identity of the software that enables you to prevent these threats? And if so, how?
Yes. So remember what I said early on about the pipeline. There's a reasoning path. There's also the execution path. So execution path, there is MCP tools to your core enterprise asset. That execution path, it was the same. Most likely, it's still using long-standing credential, and most likely these are the NHI to carry out the task. So
Mhm.
part of the topic for this conversation or podcast is organizations spending last couple decades to taking care of human identity onboarding, just as I mentioned early on, you know, using IOM, HR, you know, validate the employee, and part of the birthright, give you the access. But NHI, so there's a couple main points in NHI. First of all, I'm not sure people realize NHI by leading researcher is 80-1 or 100-1 ratio between number of NHI to the human. Second,
Sorry, if I could just hit pause there for 1 second. You're making my case as to why it's futile to inventory the software entities. If they're 80-1, how are we going to review this? Like, maybe the answer is we shouldn't. Maybe it's just not important.
actually you do. The reason is following is if enterprise is going to adopt AI agent and AI agent using a large uninventoried NHI to carry out the actual task, you need to inventory the NHI. Otherwise, first of all, there's no way you can govern. There's no way you can do the access certification of who access to what, and combining with undeterministic behavior of AI agent, you will start running into what we call the blast radius. So
Right.
you have to
Maybe.
inventory NHI. One example is after Hugging Face deciding there's the incident. It does three things. Number one, it shut down all affected, or it shut down all the pod. Second,
Mhm.
it rotate all credentials. So imagine Hugging Face in that incident. It can't rotate the credential if you don't know who they are, right?
You mean the mitigation was to rotate credentials?
Yes, I think the IR that's actually published. The IR, the second step they did is somehow rotate all affected credentials.
Mm-hmm. Well, from my perspective, the way that I see it is that if you think of the authzen standard. This is an OpenID standard for authorization. We have principal, action, resource, context. And so the approach of identity-centric authorization is we know all the principals, and we want to make sure that we control what they have access to, what's their birthright privilege, and how do we provision them with the least amount of privilege, and then add privileges as necessary. That's we're very focused on the principle. My contention is forget about the principle. All we really care about is the action on the resource. So we have an MCP tool that's connected to our marketing database. Now, if we just look at the action on the resource, then when we can detect when things go wrong, we can detect Hugging Face because we can detect an anomalous amount of a certain action on a certain resource, and we could say, look, something's going wrong here. At that point, we want identity because we want to know who to hold accountable, which pieces of software are doing it, which are the humans who are behind that, who are the organizations, the business partners, the third parties. So we want identity. My contention is that we absolutely need identity. It's critical, but we need it for accountability, not for authorization. And we can detect anomalous activity, and we can create our policies based on the action and resource alone. And the problem with identity-based access control is that it's not a simple question of who has access to what anymore. We have humans, we have software, we have organizations like business units and third parties. We have external parties like federations, maybe a regulatory agency or an industry group. So we have all these different entities that might be involved in a given transaction. And if we're going to make principle our North Star for access control, then which principle are we using? Are we using the software entity, the human entity, or the organizational entity? And what do we do when there's a combination of those in our business context for that transaction? So my contention is we've hit end of days for identity-based authorization, and we need to really switch. But that's my soapbox more than the topic. So feel
Yeah, I agree with you. Is I think old school like us, we understand there's called RZ. There's RSN for authentication. There's RZ. RZ has coarse grains authorization and also fine grain authorization. But with the AI agent, the authorization is a little bit beyond just a principle, but there's also the intent. In addition, just like you said, the scope. Organization in in our jargon is more like a scope. The principle, there's a two type of principle is if it's an intelligent gen agent, the principle will be the human prompters. But if it's a pure autonomous agent or orchestration agent, the principle will be the agentic identities. The scope, it can be a little bit wider interpretation. That's why part of agent gateway, you need the policy engines. So a scope is more tied up to the business functionality. So for instance, if you have a simple reset password from the help desk, so the principal will be whoever prompt, into the chat, that will be the help desk, a tier one, I guess. The intent is there's a two type of intent. The original intent to LLM will be I want to need to reset password for actor A, but the intent pass to the agent gateway will be um, reset credential. However, the part of the agent gateway and then also what you mentioned scope is um, if this person belongs to a special organization or this person is high risk, either administrator or third party vendors or people haven't logged on for a number of days or we'll call dormant. In addition, the reset password frequencies. So based on overall, maybe we can call the scope altogether. We can apply the policy engines to determine are we a law or are we not. But after the determination, we got to pass the narrow down ephemeral tokens from agent gateway to policy servers. Yes, with I think this is a simple case, what I just described. But in reality, I think the scope can be a lot more complex. That's why the agent gateway have to have the complete identity graph to make that decision. It's not a simple process.
maybe we could pivot a little bit into gateways because your Odysseus is developing a gateway, and this is a very I think this is a common approach for that startups are having to try and figure out how to solve this agentic authorization challenge. But before the show started in the green room, we had a quick conversation about different types of gateways. How do you think about the types of gateways that are out there right now, especially for MCP?
Based on our knowledge, there is 4 industry entrance players showcase their agent gateway. The first one is from the access management player, which is a dominant Microsoft Entra and Okta. They have their agent gateway. The second is Savient, and also actually Savient has a major announcement right after this call of all their agent gateway. The third one is like a pure play agent gateway. The last one is our own category. We build the agent gateway, having a foundation of the entire identity graph or identity relationship, grow from identity visibility and also identity intelligent platform players. So there's some pros and cons, and because we are coming from IVIP, so my information might be biased, but our main strong foundation is to make that authorization decision. You have to have the complete what we call the either identity / entitlements or access graph. So what that means is We IDCS, we maintain the relationship from the human to NHI to role to group and to the resource. We start by at the assignment edge because our data ingestion won't be more broad. If we go to assignment edge, it's more like the target system agnostic. So because we have this complete graph of enterprise access points, we can determine a runtime along with a predefined policy to say, hey, does that human prompter trying to reset password for user A, should we allow them? So some more information we use it as part of the determination point is we look at the risk. If the user is high risk, so high risk user means I think in our system is number one, these are the system administrators. So these are the user ID to have the role or group access with administrative privilege. The second one is these are the external vendors. The third one is user being dormant, which means there's no login activity for the last number of days. Our watermark is 90 days. So if you are high risk, our policy will just basically block you the access. But even to the deeper dive is we also have a thing called the blast radius. So blast radius is if I want to reset password user A, we have the indirect relationship. Remember the thing I said early on, just give me a sign if I talk too much. We have human NHI role, group, and resource. So I know exactly how many resource that human has access. If we have a certain policy said, hey, of the resource you have access, the number of resource we consider as a critical asset or what we call high value target, that policy also apply, as the denial process. So you need to have this complete relationship to make the finer grain authorization. I want to say finer grain authorization, but more like intent-based authorization. So
Yeah. I'm glad you pivoted into risk because that's exactly the direction that I was going. And it was interesting to hear you do it because you talked about people being high risk, like this person's a system administrator or this person has a inactive account, I think were the two examples that you used. But my contention would be that it's not when you're trying to detect risky things, it's not the subject that really is risky. The risk is in the action on the resource. Are you doing a transaction over $10,000? Then I know that my risk is $10,000. If I have a user who's an administrator who is trying to thumbs up a post on the intranet, then the transaction value there is very low and the risk is very low. So just because he's an admin and has a lot of privileges doesn't mean that thumbsing up a post on our intranet is actually a high risk. So I feel like there's a very bad correlation. If I want to report, so I guess my question is to govern means to be able to help enterprises manage risk. And how are you actually able to govern if there's a bad correlation between people and between the stuff that's happening and the risk? Because you're looking at the risk of the person, not the risk of the thing that's actually happening.
Oh, sorry. It's actually I forget to mention this. The policy, there's a two type of policy. One is auto box policy, and the second is a custom policy. So auto box policy, just what I said early on, is a common use case. So for high risk users, we deny, or if the user have access to a high value asset, we deny as a resource. But as part of the custom policy, you can define your own custom rules. Said if the transaction amount, if that's part of the JSON payload, if the transaction amount over defined threshold, and also based on the MCP tools, if number of transaction per defined time a period over the threshold, that's part of reason for denial, but that's part of the custom policy based on the domain. So if this is a payment tag or fintech, yes, we highly recommend, the player will create a custom policy for this. But what I'm talking about is just more like identity-based policy was part of the out of box. Since remember this way, when we ship the product to the buyer, we don't know this guy a healthcare or fintech or manufacturer. A different domain has their own business rules to enforcing policy. That part we leave to the client to determine to add. But however, as part of evaluation, your custom policy is part of the entire chain. I'm sorry, evaluation chain.
So, last question, and then we'll go to last thoughts. I'm wondering about governance is very metrics driven, and I'm wondering if you're thinking about any metrics that the business owners can look at to understand the risk of their system, or to create more observability about what's going on in the system.
Yeah, frankly, this is part also we struggle a little bit. Since our initial product, IVIP, we build the governance, or we call the access review, manager and also business owners. These are the static review, based on last 20 years practice. But agentic AI, because the nature of the machine speed, in addition to undetermined behavior, we struggle a little bit. Also, try to figure out, how to better govern, because this is the green fields. There's not much heuristic information we can leverage for our design decisions. So in the future, we probably that's to send some surveys or talking to our CISO especially in the compliance and GRC space, say what they expect to the governance. But based on some of the feedback, some of the initial governance feedback from the GRC or CISO perspective is organizations still taking the cautious step to adopting the AI agents. However, they start exit review of their purchase SaaS tenant, the one I mentioned early on, the one in the gray space. So they want to make sure whatever SaaS tenant they have the subscription, or they're done, or if they're a custodian in financial firm, their partners also using the SaaS. They want to make sure that part is governed. At least they know if I'm using the Salesforce, if I'm using these features, they want to make sure if they have AI native, at least that's part of the governing task what they have. But like I said, yes, we're still work in progress in how to bring the best governance features in the fast-paced agentic workflow.
Right. Okay. Well, the pigeons are flying, so that's a sign that it's last thoughts. Where last thoughts, where you'll be, or summary of this conversation, whatever you want.
So this is a little bit like an AI agent talking to LLM, trying to summarize this this podcast. So I think a couple things. Number one is having positive feedback, or having a debate, or having a discussion regarding the frontier or green field technologies. I think this is extremely beneficial for the product firms, and also I think for people, for the practitioner, listening from different perspective, and I think you will benefit you make a right decision as well. Second, I was hoping as part of this podcast, using some explanation what AI agent does and why NHI is important, will help practitioner or adopters understand the risk, and also understand the necessity why NHI is a necessary step before you adopt the AI agent. So our perspective is, before you open your house, you gotta clean your house first. So what's the better way to clean your house is, number one, inventory. Second, classify. Third, remediate of your NHI. So that way, if the business is ready to move the AI agent, the IT department or the security department of IT can say, hey, as an organization, right, we're ready, and we have the framework to support the business growth. AI agent is coming. There's no doubt about it, and the amount of work efficiency for adopting AI agent, I think is pretty amazing. It's almost contrasting with the industrial revolution happened 100 years ago. So this is a necessary step for us to adopt. And as a security organization, I think we should also adopt as well, and also support a business to grow. So I think just understand your NHI and the entitlements. Oh, sorry.
No, go on. Yeah.
Um,
Understanding your AI and entitlements. Yeah.
sorry. Understand not only your inventory, your NHI, but the entitlements means what resource your NHI can reach. These both what we call identity entitlement are both criticals, because our industry was struggling to understand why I have identity sprawl, why I have entitlement sprawl. So you can't just solve the NHI. You got to solve both NHI and also the entitlements. So which means you're shooting two birds at one string. I'm not talking about pigeon. So you're
But
fixing
not my
identity
pigeons.
and entitlement sprawl at the same time. So yeah, thanks for the time, and hopefully we'll be inviting here another time. I will talk better. I'll talk better.
And this is the view. So I breed pigeons, and this is the view from my loft, and we use it at the end of the show. Cool. Well, good episode. Reminder to the audience that we have notes on all these episodes. So it's geeky. We have a GitHub wiki page for every episode. There's a short link, glue.co/IOH- the episode number 211 in this case. Would like for the first time ever, I pre-announced the episode, but just doing it again. Yash Prakash will be a guest. AI agents need intent, not roles, introducing IBAC. So please join us next Tuesday. One last quick reminder, please follow Identity Office Hours on LinkedIn or YouTube. Just takes a second. That helps us. We're trying to get to 3,000 followers, especially on LinkedIn. And with that, I will say, Robert, thank you so much for answering my questions and engaging. And I look forward to seeing, how okay, it's like Odysseus, but it's IDCS. IDCS progresses, and best of luck. It's a competitive landscape, but I think that there's certainly a lot of opportunity. So I wish you the best of luck. And with that, I'll say thank you so much for being a guest, and it was great chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. So have a good day.
And with that, I'll say thank you, audience, for tuning in. And